Welcome to Tub Talks with Damon. My special tub today is at Easton Mountain in New York, and my special guest in this special tub is Bob Forbes.
Activist, kink master, amazing human, teacher.
All of the above.
Welcome to the tub. Thank you for agreeing to this interview with me.
Awesome. I'm so happy.
we are just in case people are watching, we are at Easton Mountain, and we are toward the end of the first
Poly Men Who Love Men conference.
What that also means is that you might see people in the background, you might hear music playing, because there's a lot of action going on all around us, which is the case with Easton Mountain. But Sir Bob decided to take a bath with me in the middle of all that, which I appreciate.
Yes.
So the first question I like to ask my guests is, what do you like most about your body?
Probably actually my nipples and my nipple rings, because it's an erogenous zone for many other activities. So yeah. And I feel like I have a welcoming eyes and smile. But
Now, were your nipples always sensitive, or did that develop over time?
they were sensitive, and I decided to get them pierced, and a lot of people said, well, you're probably going to lose your sensitivity. I did not. So, I mean, I think that's an individual case.
When did you get them pierced?
Oh my God. I would say late 80s.
Okay.
Late 80s.
So you were kind of ahead of what became a bit of a trend.
Well, it was a kink trend years ago, but then suddenly became more of just a wide spectrum trend, and obviously an LGBT trend. But I think in the kink world, the leather community, there were a lot of body piercings going that did symbolize a lot of different aspects of the kink world.
Wow. So as with so many things, kink kind of paved the path, paved the road for a lot of other people to figure out what they want or what they might find pleasurable, or boundaries around that.
Definitely.
Wow. Okay, so I want to ask you about that. However, and I also am just very fascinated by your background in HIV/AIDS activism. And I just want to ask you, with your permission, more about that.
Definitely.
So where were you when we started to learn, or when the news started to report on this new gay cancer scare in '81?
I was actually in college, and then when it really became the edge of the pandemic, everyone was dying. I was living in Connecticut, moving to upstate New York, the Syracuse market area. So that's where all that was happening. But by the time I got to Syracuse, I had lost a lot of people in Connecticut and New York City, and friends that I knew in other Chicago, Toronto, etc. like that, San Francisco. And a lot of them were people of the leather kink community. And I feel like we also were the ones, and I'm not trying to take anything away from anyone else, but I feel like we were a big part of let's get a hold of this. We're losing our people, not only our LGBT culture, but we're losing our kink culture. So we were very active, and first we didn't know anything, so it was condoms. That was the only thing we had to negotiate with. So it was really forcing people with condoms, but at the same time, we were burying all of our friends.
Again, we are in the middle of sorry for the music,
But it's great music.
It is.
Does this song bring... Jeff, would you mind closing the door? Thank you. Does this song, Donna Summer, remind you of those
Definitely.
times?
Yes, definitely, very much. The dance floor, I mean, I'm going back to before we had social media apps. Obviously, we didn't even have AOL or any chat at the moment. So you were meeting your culture within dark alleys and bars and places like that. So we were dancing to this disco era music, and a lot of that now just resonates to, like, even hearing that song, I remember someone that wanted that played when they died. So just, those are good memories. They can be a happy tear from that period of time, to know that we have fought the fight and where we are, but there's still a need to continue. There's lots of things on the horizon, but we still need to care for each other.
So you said you had a friend who wanted to hear this song when they passed. Were you there for that?
I was. I helped start a grassroots organization in Syracuse in the mid-'80s, late 80s, called the Boys from Syracuse.
The Boys from Syracuse?
And we were a group of men that were losing our friends. Two of the people, the five of us, were HIV positive at that time. One is actually still alive, so it's amazing. But we were, before there was really agency. So we were raising funds, we rented a studio apartment, we were putting people from bad situations in there, holding their hand, feeding them. Hospitals didn't really know anything about HIV and AIDS then. So often there would be a red dot by your name on the door, and no one ever went into the room. You know, the tray went by the door and that was it. Some nurses would not gown up and would not go in. I remember looking like I was going into surgery the way they would make us gown up to go in there.
Did they let you in?
Yes, yep. We were definitely there and held hands and told so many people it was okay to leave. And at that period of time, we had KS, we had cyclomegalovirus, we had pneumocystic pneumonia. So often those people lived a very short death sentence. And, you know, they died on a respirator with pneumocystic pneumonia or going blind or, you know, any of those complications from HIV and AIDS. So it's great to see that we've changed.
Yeah. How did you get through those times?
I got through, I had a partner at that time. So, you know, having a consistent partner and a relationship and knowing that we were losing so many people, we made the choices that we did to, you know, practice safer sex, even among our own two bodies, just because it was such an unknown world. We didn't really know how transmission, you know, we thought we knew, but we really didn't know. And where we are today is just amazing.
There was a lot of speculating then about how HIV is transmitted or not transmitted.
Right.
I mean, I remember people telling me they thought, you know, it could be through saliva or sharing a cigarette or...
Yeah. And that was the fear why people didn't even go into the room, because it was like it could be airborne or whatever. That's why they made us gown up, and you know, the unsensitive to the human person was definitely, we didn't know, so that's where it was at.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, can you breathe this in? Whatever, like you're saying. So definitely being in that area, and then seeing a lot of activism that we needed to do, like being part of ACT UP and going to New York and going to Washington, D.C. and laying down on the lawn. I did every quilt that was in D.C. over the years, was part of the AIDS Memorial Quilt, opening quilt and stuff. Made panels, you know, losing people, obviously. So, you know, just, I'm just so happy that we're at a place where people can have very healthy choices today.
So some of what we've been talking about at this conference are a lot of the
Choices that I talk about in this Tough Talk show quite a bit, some of the innovations, the radical changes that I also feel so humbled and grateful to have seen. I mean, I was humbled when antiretrovirals came out in '96.
Right.
Not that they immediately solved the problem, and they still haven't solved the problem, but that they were the beginning of changing that death sentence as an inevitability of AIDS.
Right.
Do you remember where you were when that started becoming?
I was
more
actually
common?
living in Syracuse, New York, and I remember us doing multiple cocktails and, you know, someone having an entire table laid out of medicine, and then often there were IVs that we were administering, and I and this other gentleman were very much the proactive with the group, and we happened to have schedules that worked around that. So often we were every 2 hours helping someone do an IV at home.
That you were working as a nurse? Or
Technically, we were not nurses, but a home health nurse, when people were sent home to die, showed us how to do it because they couldn't keep up with it, nor some of them wanted. They would refuse to actually provide those services. So we became that person often that were providing that service, making sure people did that. I remember when finally there was a watch with a beeper on that we got, so every 4 hours it would beep for people to remind them to take their medication. I mean, what a different world we're in from that.
Right.
So yeah, I was
Because they
living in
had to be
Syracuse.
taken on really strict time schedules
Yes.
at first. Yeah. So this was not your job to be doing this work. This was what you were doing as a human, as a friend.
Right. Just as my human compassion for my mankind, you know, just coming from the family that I came from and the belief that my grandmother instilled in me and a Native American and being comfortable with who you are and accepting me. And I always came from that, what can you give? You know, you have bounty, you have something that you can give. So I've always come from that aspect.
So that background, you are Native American.
Yes. I'm
I'll try-
50%, you know, because of my grandmother. So just having that indigenous and farm to table and caring for people that she did, you know, really instilled that in me, that if I have something that I can share, there's always room at my table. There's always space for people. There's always, you know, you give what you can give, protect people.
Wow, so you were in your 20s when
Yes.
this started happening, and then continued this work, this God's
Continue,
work through your 30s.
yeah, continue doing it, you know, on the side is being very active and involved as an openly gay person. Realizing that my kink people had left a lot, getting more actively involved with those individuals as well. And then realizing there was other methods of way to promote and raise money in bars and etc. like that. I was all the time working a retail profession, and then finally I dove into working actually at an AIDS organization. So I worked for 11 years at an AIDS organization in the Syracuse market, which has changed its name a couple times, you know, as we moved to more home health as opposed to AIDS service only, which is wonderful that we've been able to do that, you know, and still have a focus.
But is there a but?
No, just always being involved in that, and then finally moving really into that, where my compassion that I was giving more than 50% on top of my work, now I was able to provide that as a full-time, you know, kind of passion to the community. And, you know, in retrospect, have a decent, okay salary from that, you know, as opposed to it was just a give 100% initially. So it allowed me to continue to work in that work, and then start doing HIV testing, STD testing, stage-based behavior with people, working on risk reduction as more materials and more things came out that we started to know. You know, and then really got involved with New York State Department of Health and doing a lot of stuff there to help, you know, swing the pendulum, move the pendulum in a direction.
And this is like the aughts now, the
Yes.
2000s. Okay.
Yeah. So getting
Okay.
very involved with them in 2006 to actually, I really just left the health department as an advisor in July because COVID hit. So they asked me to, I was blessed, they asked me to stay on a little longer. So I stayed on as a community member, working with the community in New York State.
Okay, so you
So
were...
I think that's where part of our path may have crossed with PrEP when the whole PrEP campaign was coming around. So we both would have been in different aspects, but very involved with, we have this wonderful tool, why are we not marketing it the way we need to? And then U equals U.
Yeah. So I saw a definite change in the New York State Department of Health over that period of time, between 2006 to present. For me, the shift really happened, largely, perhaps not only, but largely with Dimitri Daskalakis and the pleasure-based messaging that he began to integrate into PrEP and U equals U. Did that, do you remember when that started to shift?
Oh, definitely. And I remember him presenting, you know, and meeting him and all that kind of stuff, and actually knowing him through other avenues and forums, but actually having that presentation with him being involved with the New York City Department of Health at that point, but really providing a lot of, yes, there was definitely a shift that let's look at the whole aspect of us as humans, and you know, not that we weren't looking at us as humans and we're sort of stage-based or meeting people where they were at, but it suddenly became more of like, why are we not meeting people where they're at? So there was definitely a pendulum, definitely a swing that took place. And I think also the change just with the people that were in Albany at the New York State Department of Health, just looking at all of the great people that are now there or have slowly transitioned to other places, but we're more, you know, open, really realizing that we have to do this.
Yeah. Do you think there's been more of a consumer uptake with pleasure-based messaging?
I definitely think so, because when it's not like, you know, in the beginning we're like, you have to wear a condom, we don't have anything else.
Right.
You know, it was like all those condom messages and posted all over and trying to get you to go there.
Yeah.
And some people just choose to not do that. So, you know, having things that are pleasure-based or meeting you where you're at and saying, okay, here's what we have to offer you. And meeting you there is so much better than when we had to like suddenly forced to take control.
Right.
And now we're not dying. You know, people are living and there's choices.
Right. And it's such a different idea psychologically to appeal to people based on health versus avoiding death.
Right.
You know,
So we were able to change that message to it's not a death sentence anymore. You have choices to not come in contact with it.
Yeah.
So we have all these different methods now that you can take. But yes, having that message definitely made a huge difference in being able to deliver that. And even with any of my, you know, whole LGBT spectrum, you know, just being able to work with sex workers, being able to work with leather folk, being able to work with trans folks, or, you know, drag queens or cross-dressers, and getting them to understand they have choices of how they can still live their life, their lifestyle, and how that's okay.
Beautiful. Now, I am wanting to know more about kink.
Okay.
And what that means to you.
Okay.
So you mentioned discovering kink at an early age.
18.
How did you find it?
Well, I was very attracted to the masculine image. So going way back, that most of you probably are not going to know this, but there was very few magazines. So it was like Drummer and Honcho and all those kind of things. So seeing that imagery and realizing that I'm attracted to that kind of man. And then finally meeting Master in full, that Tama Finland, you know, fear but excited to death, you know, like the little schoolgirl kind of thing almost. And meeting him and him nurturing me and taking me under his wing.
How did you meet him?
I met him in a local bar, and one of my best friends was out with me dancing. It was like a disco bar, and he walked in, the only person in leather, so it's this like, you know, here he is. And my friend's like, oh, Bobby, look, here's this guy, he's your image. Because he'd seen magazines at my house and stuff. So he actually totally embarrassed me and went over and introduced himself to the person and said, my friend over there really would like to meet you. And I was just like, you know. So that's how it started. And because he had come back to the area from San Francisco, knew about HIV and AIDS, was just starting to happen out there, because this was early, but it was happening. You know, just having that nurture and that development and understanding that, to me, kink allowed me to really explore my inner body and my soul and where I wanted to be. It nurtured me in such a way that I had a fulfillment, and that I could have different relationships with different people and meet my needs and how to be safer with that. So that really started my journey, and then just getting more involved with being a title holder or some of that kind of stuff later, but always realizing that that was a drawn to me from that imagery to the people, to respecting that community seemed to take hold. And I found that there's very much cross-reference with contracts and realizing where you're at if you really get into the BDSM lifestyle of it. So once you get into the BDSM lifestyle of it, it pairs so much to poly relationships, because we do have different layers. We have sirs, we have masters, we have boys, we have slaves. So you can have a triad or a multitude of family that all has a responsibility to each other, all loves and cares about each other, and provides some of the different kink needs within the kink community as well as the love, but provide some of the things that we find in other poly families. You know, so it has that correlation or that value where it follows along.
Beautiful. Can you help people understand the connection between kink and spiritual practice?
Oh, I definitely think anything that we do, loving ourselves and loving someone else, has a very spiritual practice. It doesn't matter, you know, what your religious, like, denominational belief is, but spiritually, you're just finding in your heart and your love and that spirit to be with someone else or to share with multiple people, and how to love each other and respect each other. So to me, spiritually, kink just raises that height of empowering me and empowering others. So it raises myself up to that like spirit level of it's all wonderful and it's all okay. And with consent and what you develop as your safer mode of what you're going to do, I mean, it's just a beautiful spiritual place.
Wow. So these are all, would you say, expressions of the soul? Expressions
definitely.
of what I call light or source?
Yes. Oh, it's definitely light sources. Definitely.
Yeah.
When you feel that, I think when you really feel love, it is definitely a light source. There is definitely that empowerment that you feel within to share.
Beautiful.
With others.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I call that, for me, that's like a connection with God. I mean, I'm
Yes.
I'm comfortable with that word, but a lot of people aren't.
And I am
So,
too.
Just like
But,
whatever
you know, I
want to call
have
it.
people are not. So
Yeah.
I say, you know, whatever your spirit is, it's a
God,
connection.
Buddha,
with-
Madonna,
Right,
whatever you
right.
call it. It's just
Right,
that's
right.
part of you that's in you that
Yeah.
gets expressed in these various ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of what's really interesting about the times we're living in is that we do get more of these opportunities to discover what's in your soul. What is
Oh.
your soul asking for? What is your body asking for? And then finding ways
That
to
you
learn.
can ask.
Yeah.
You can ask for that though.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I come from a period where if you didn't have a master that you could ask some of that stuff, you know, in the kink world, a lot of our LGBT general community didn't have really good resources or mentors. I mean, our house ball community with mothers and stuff, and I'm not, you know, I don't want to take away from that, but I have the ownership of where I'm at and realizing that. So, yeah, it's just amazing to find that.
And that you still have that in you, the searcher, the discoverer.
You know, there's still, as I often say to people, there's a boy inside of every one of us.
Yeah.
So there's an energy, a spirit that you can find and you can release within a trusting environment to explore and be a better person for yourself and the community and the people that you love surrounding you.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So here, you kind of said earlier, but here at this conference, you presented a session on
BDSM.
and I'm sorry I missed it because I was
Right.
there again.
No,
but
okay.
say more about what that was.
Well, it was really the correlation, the connection, how spiritually you are connected to this and what it can do for your love relationship with a partner or multiple partners.
That
And then
BDSM.
BDSM, and how also that a lot of the BDSM lifestyle, the kink people, really have used a good foundation of contracts and development of how relationships are very poly.
Yeah.
You know, so getting people to understand that and be able to explore that and accept that, and how also BDSM can heighten and bring a new romance, a new love, a new spark to what you're doing. So allowing people to ask those questions, be able to explore those in a safe environment with those instruments, those tools that they can learn about and know what safer places to play with those as not to play with those.
Mm-hmm.
It's just wonderful to see new people bloom and add that to their repertoire, their horizon.
And you've been generously offering people experiences here
Mhm.
during this conference.
So
which
I'll
I know
do
you have to get back
one-on-one.
to soon.
No, that's okay.
He's
But
been
I
taking
do-
time out to help, but that there's been people here that are curious, that are
Right.
turning to you to help them learn. If people don't have access to you in their immediate vicinity, how would you encourage them to explore this with
Well,
a
the-
master, with someone who's
Right. I do what's called vetting. You need to find people that you trust and not just look at, no offense to any of our instant hookup sites, and we've all used them and I'm guilty of using them. But I like to go through a protocol. I like to get to know someone as opposed to instant. So they can certainly also, like if they're interested in myself or some of the other kink collective that I work with, they can reach out certainly here to Easton. They can find me on a SALT group, which is a social alliance of leather tribes on Facebook. And they can connect with me there. I can connect them with other individuals in their area that I feel comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
They can provide them that safety network to learn and explore.
Mm-hmm. How about, are there people offering this virtually? And what do you think about that?
There are, and if there's someone who, I mean, I've done some virtual, but if there's someone that really comes highly recommended and we got there with COVID, it can help you. But I definitely will not do certain things virtual with you just doing it by yourself. There has to be someone else there for a safety net. You know, I'm
Like what
concerned
things?
about, well, if you're going to do, you know, even tying yourself up, self-tying or handcuffs, or, you know, even if you're trying to do a self-paddle or something, you still should have someone there or someone know that you're doing that. It's sort of like going to do that hookup, and we used to make the phone call, have someone that knew where we were going. I'm still very much about that people need to work together. So I'm okay with some of it, but if it gets intensely into things, I think the one-on-one, and if you're really willing, you need to invest yourself in order to have that experience and have that time with someone that you feel you can connect with.
Yeah.
And there are places I can connect you in with New York, Pennsylvania, you know, as well as here. There's different kink events that come up here, as well as other camps that have that good connection for safe, wholesome kind of environment. I mean, Easton's a wonderful family, a wonderful place to be. You know, it's a great place just to come and relax.
Yes,
And you can be in the hot tub.
you can hang out in the hot tub. And this is going to be airing in probably late spring, so there's a lot
Right.
of things this summer that are happening here in Easton that people can check out. So again, if somebody wanted to know in their local area, like how do I find a Sir Bob like so generous and kind and sweet, what would you recommend? How would they search? Is it like Kink Master, LGBTQ?
Well, I think there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that put on a persona that don't really know.
How do we filter out?
You know,
that?
there's a couple different, like you can look at FetLife,
Mhm.
which is a website that people will call each other out, and you pretty much are, you know, vetted on there, etc. Like I said, Easton is a great place to reach out because they do know 5 to 10 of us within Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York City, different places, so that we can be connected to you, and if not available, can possibly assist you in finding the right person to do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, one more subject. You recently had a milestone
My birthday?
birthday.
Okay, yeah, I'm actually going to be turning 61 in a few weeks.
Wow.
And I'm okay with all of that, you know, and the fact that here we are at this age with the HIV medications and stuff that we have, and the way not to come in contact with HIV, all these wonderful choices and new stuff coming out. To be at this age from when I was like, you know, 18 to 20 and AIDS was coming out, it's just amazing, you know. And there's days I feel old, there's days I feel like I'm still the boy at 18, you know, and that's the whole, like, finding it in your heart.
Yeah. What is better, sex at 60 or sex at 20?
Oh, I would say sex now,
Yeah.
because you know what you want and you're better able to negotiate that,
Yeah.
as opposed to back then just exploring it all
Yeah.
and having some bad hookups,
Yeah.
you know, and learn from them. But I think now, because I'm better able to negotiate, I know things that I like, doesn't mean that I'm not open to exploring other avenues of sex or kink, but understanding how I can do that safer, how I can respond to another master or another boy or a person that I'm interested in that. So definitely, I think age is good.
I think so too, though I know that a lot of gay men have trepidations and fear about being honest about their age, that they fear rejection or ageism. How do you deal with that?
I just open and honest, and I feel like you need to accept me for who I am, and if you're not willing to, if you see me like as that old man at 60, then let you have possibly that bad experience. I mean, I have had people that have actually come back and asked, you know, when I was in my 50s, that what they were asking, can I come back? Can I, you know, talk to you? Can I do this? Because I had a really bad experience, etc. I'm just like, you know, you take me for what I am. I'm a pretty open book. I'm pretty open and honest. And like I said, I meet people where they're at. And if you go like, I can't think of that, well, I will ask you why.
Yeah.
And there could be other barriers. Like, am I your father's age and it's too close? There can be other reasons of why. Or you were punished by someone that in the wrong way. You know, like if you had a father, well, roughly my age, or an uncle or someone who gave you a switch or punished you in some way, you could have a very negative to BDSM. BDSM is a pleasure that's an arousal, and it's a spiritual, and it's a love when it's provided in the correct way.
Right. Right.
It's not a harm.
Beautiful. Thank you for speaking to that.
Thank you.
I know you have to get back to the
Yes.
dungeon.
So
Yes.
we're going to cut this short, but I hope everybody who is watching this thinks about some of the issues. You inspire me, just how you have committed the majority of your life to service, to health, to pleasure, and how much you've given to our world.
Well, thank you.
That when I talk about prep or U equals U or whatever, I know that I'm standing on the shoulders of some amazing
Well, you're
heroes
doing
such as
amazing
yourself.
work.
So I
mean,
appreciate
that's
that.
That's it.
I'm so glad we got a chance to meet here. And next time
Definitely.
you're in Brooklyn, come visit me and come visit my tub, and we'll
Yeah.
talk even more.
Awesome. Sounds
Okay.
perfect.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
again, if people want to follow you and reach you, the best way for them to do that.
It's probably on the Facebook group. I'm
Which-
Sir Leather Bob, actually
Okay.
on Facebook. But
Okay.
you can find me under SOL,
Mhm.
which is Social Alliance of Leather Types. If you do a search,
That's on Facebook.
That's on Facebook.
I'll
You
have
can
the post right there.
And you can also connect through Easton. I mean, Easton will be happy to share information
Beautiful.
because I love this family here and I love this place here. So, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Awesome.
Mwah.
All right, everybody, if you like this interview, subscribe down below, follow Bob, have these conversations in your tub, wherever you have conversations with your friends. Ask them what they're thinking about HIV prevention and kink and health and aging and pleasure.
And I think we're going to have a better world when we talk about that.
Definitely.
Thank you, baby.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.